Imagine a young couple, excited for their life together. The future seems to stretch out ahead of them, hopeful, optimistic. Then imagine that it's your partner that has to go away, has to leave and go and fight in a war many thousands of miles away. You're terrified. He leaves and you worry. You panic for his well-being. Will he come back at all? One day, with him gone, you receive a telephone call. He's been shot. He's fighting for his life. The shock, the fear, the terror. The relief when you learn that he has survived, but the bullet is still within his body. The surgeons and doctors have patched up the damage as best as they could manage. Months pass. He's recovering in a hospital in a foreign country. Until the day he does come home, the day you've waited and longed for. At first, his return is a source of pure joy. You're reunited. But then gradually, as you sit together in a quiet room, you hear his breathing. It's shallow, uneven, and you can sense the tension in his body. This is the very same person who left for war full of life and laughter, but now he's different. Every scar on his skin tells a story you're afraid to hear. You reach out gently and trace a long scar on his face, that frozen river of pain. You see the damage to his mind and body, and the tight, unexploded mine of trauma and fear and rage that's deep within him. You want to get close, you want to help, but you also know you need to be so cautious, so careful. Welcome to our deep dive analysis of The Manhunt by Simon Armitage, a poem that explores the physical and psychological aftermath of war on a soldier and his partner. Today's episode is designed to tie in with your exam preparation booklet, and that's exactly what this episode is going to do. It's going to look in detail, in depth, at the poem's title, and then work its way methodically, line by line, stanza by stanza, through the poem. Now remember, in your end-of-year, Year 9 exam, you're going to be tasked with comparing one poem from the conflict poetry module that you studied to another poem from the very same module. That's why it's really key, as part of your revision and preparation, that you've got a detailed knowledge of all of the poems covered in the previous half term. And that is exactly where this episode ties in. So, without much further ado, let's get into analysis of The Manhunt, and as I said, starting with the title. Let's start with the title of the poem, The Manhunt. At first glance, a manhunt sounds like a chase for a criminal or a missing person. Interestingly, it's also the name of a classic children's hide-and-seek game. Now, this ironic echo of a child's game might strike you as odd given the poem's heavy subject matter. But Armitage chose the title carefully. The title frames the entire poem as a search mission, not a game at all, but a serious quest. The wife, or partner, is hunting for the person her husband used to be, trying to rediscover him, find the man she fell in love with. By using the language of a chase, Armitage emphasizes how elusive and challenging it is to grasp the man behind the trauma. The playful connotation of manhunt as a children's game also perhaps subtly highlights what war does. It takes something, or someone, light-hearted. It takes their partnership or their marriage, their once happy life, and it turns it into a high-stakes pursuit. There is then nothing childish about the hunt. It's painstaking and it's fraught with emotional peril. Now, it is worth noting contextually that this poem, The Manhunt, was originally aired in a documentary about war veterans, and it was read by the real wife, called Laura, of a soldier who had endured serious injuries. Now, Armitage often writes about contemporary issues in a very relatable way, and here he wanted to shine light on the hidden costs of modern warfare, not just for soldiers, but for those who love them too. So the title encapsulates that mission: to find and reclaim the human being lost in the soldier. The poem itself opens after the first phase, after passionate nights and intimate days. This is a period of attempted reconnection between the soldier and his wife. That phrase, first phase, sounds somewhat clinical, a bit like a stage in treatment or even a military operation, but it's juxtaposed with the warmth of passionate and intimate times. This hints that healing is going to be a long process, both physically and emotionally. The wife has waited patiently for this moment. Only then does he begin to let her in. The poem uses the refrain "only then" repeatedly, of course, which shows how cautious and gradual this process actually is. Each "only then" marks a small opening in the husband's self-imposed emotional closure. It's as if the wife is saying, only after all that time, only with careful love, would he let me start this journey. Armitage also uses a series of very vivid metaphors to describe the soldier's scars and injuries, each comparing a part of his body to a delicate or broken object. These metaphors do two things. They show the physical damage from war, and they hint at deeper emotional wounds. So, for example, the wife is able to trace the frozen river which ran through his face. Think about that image for a moment, a frozen river. The word river on its own suggests something flowing, but it's frozen, it's stiff and unmoving. This, of course, could be the scar on his face, produced from the entry of the bullet, long and winding through his face like a river. But it also comes to represent frozen tears or frozen emotions, a face that has become cold, unable to express joy after trauma. The word frozen could also convey coldness and immobility, maybe how the soldier has become emotionally numb or stuck. Armitage's language here invites us to picture the scar vividly and feel its emotionally cold weight. Imagine seeing a scar like that. How would it feel to see your loved one's face with such a scar? Cold, ridged, still such a source of pain. As the wife or partner continues her gentle manhunt, she describes the blown hinge of his lower jaw. It's a very striking metaphor. Now, a hinge, of course, is something that opens and closes, and if the hinge is blown, it suggests it's been shattered or dislocated somehow. On a literal level, the soldier's jaw presumably has been injured, but consider it figuratively. A blown hinge on a jaw could imply he's unable to speak or articulate his trauma. Maybe he's tight-lipped, the door to his voice stuck. In other words, perhaps he's so traumatized that he can't put his feelings into words. His ability to communicate has itself been broken by war. The poem leaves us to wonder, is it a physical wound being described here, or a psychological one, or both at the same time? Either way, the image of a shattered hinge conveys how damaged and, of course, delicate the soldier is. And notice the verbs Armitage uses here. Let me trace, let me explore. The wife is like a careful explorer or a nurse, tracing, exploring. These are slow, patient actions. She handles him with such care as if he might break. It's a beautiful irony. War broke him, and now love, her patient love, tries to fix him piece by damaged peace. The next few lines continue this sense of exploration. The speaker speaks of the damaged porcelain collarbone, the fractured rudder of shoulder blade, which she can handle and hold and mind and attend. The word here for me, porcelain, really stands out. Porcelain is a delicate, fragile ceramic. It's easy to break and it's hard to mend. By likening his collarbone to porcelain, Armitage emphasizes the fragility of the soldier's body and also, by extension figuratively, perhaps his emotions. It's a poignant contrast. Now, a soldier who we often imagine as the kind of pinnacle of strength and almost masculine toughness is here described with imagery of fragility and breakability. The war has reduced parts of him to something brittle. Porcelain also carries an elegant beauty. Perhaps the wife still sees the beauty in him despite all of the physical and psychological damage. Meanwhile, the fractured rudder, the image used for the shoulder blade, is loaded with meaning. A rudder is what steers a ship. If his shoulder, which helps him obviously move his arms, is broken, a broken rudder, maybe he's lost direction in life. He can't steer himself emotionally. He might feel adrift because of his experiences. Fractured, on the word level, means not just broken, but broken in a jagged way. It implies pain. Rudder evokes the idea that war injuries have derailed his sense of direction in life. And all the while, his wife minds and attends these injuries. Verbs suggesting the care of a nurse or some other loving caregiver. She is attentive, treating him tenderly. The repetitious use of structure, handle and hold, mind and attend, finger and thumb, gives this sense of continuous action, a gentle, rhythmic caregiving. And it is through this gentle, rhythmic caregiving that we can feel just how slow, how gradual, how cautious the process of trying to help, support, and perhaps, if possible, fix the partner truly is. So by now we've noticed the poem's extended metaphor. The wife's search through her husband's body is like a slow, careful mission, with each scar a sort of clue along the way. The entire poem is an exploration of the soldier's body until she reaches the sweating, unexploded mine buried deep in his mind, effectively making the whole poem a metaphor for the soldier's fractured state. Each physical injury leads closer to the psychological core of his trauma. So the journey is not just physical healing or a journey through physical healing, it's an emotional discovery. After tending to these external wounds, the poem's focus shifts inward. The speaker says, "Only then could I bind the struts and climb the rungs of his broken ribs and feel the hurt of his grazed heart." Binding the struts and climbing the rungs creates an image of ribs as if they are the frame of a ship, or of course the rungs of a ladder. Those ribs and those rungs are broken. Imagining binding them, tying them up, healing them, and then climbing them like a ladder. The word struts reinforces the idea of a support structure, something that holds things up. By binding them, she is metaphorically trying to piece him back together, giving support where he seems to be coming apart. And climbing the rungs of his ribs, it's as though she is physically getting closer to his heart, step by broken step. The image also subtly echoes the structure of the poem itself, those 13 couplets like rungs on a ladder of understanding. We can see those couplets symbolically as a reflection of the ladder the speaker must climb to reach intimacy. Again, each small stanza is like another rung on that journey upward and indeed inward to his heart. And then she reaches it, his grazed heart. That word grazed suggests a wound not deep, but still painful. If the heart is grazed, we could infer that war has hurt his heart, but not completely destroyed it. There's hope yet. The heart is wounded, it's scarred, but it's still intact. Does the heart here mean his physical heart, or his capacity to love and feel? Perhaps it's both. The heart is so often symbolic of emotions, and so a grazed heart implies he's emotionally bruised. The wife can feel the hurt. She's empathizing with the emotional pain. For the first time, the poem explicitly uses the word hurt, underlining that all these images of damage ultimately amount to a deep hurt. Can you imagine feeling someone's emotional pain as if it were a tangible wound? It's a powerful moment. She's finally close to what's really, truly wrong. However, Armitage doesn't end the poem here because the ultimate source of pain hasn't been fully uncovered yet. The next phase, if you will, of the manhunt goes beyond the physical. The poem states, skirting along. Only then could I picture the scan, the fetus of metal beneath his chest where the bullet had finally come to rest. It's here the wife pictures the scan, so an X-ray medical scan revealing the fetus of metal. This is a metaphor that stands out sharply. Bullet, the fragment of a bullet, is described as a fetus. A fetus is something alive, growing. Now, it's normally a symbol of new life, but a fetus of metal is jarring. It's as if the war has planted a deadly seed inside him. This foreign object of the bullet is lodged near his heart, like an unborn part of him he will carry forever. It suggests that the consequences of war are now a part of him, as intrinsic as if he had been impregnated with pain. Also, think about how a pregnancy changes a couple's life. This metal fetus implies that the couple's relationship is forever changed by this embedded trauma, just like having a child would permanently change a family. And that line, saying the bullet had finally come to rest, indicates that even though the fighting is over, something of it remains inside, resting but ever present. It's a haunting image of unseen damage, and it's an image that curiously, surprisingly, and unsettlingly feminizes the soldier, positions him as a strange, almost mother figure with this metal fetus lurking inside him. Now we reach the climax of the poem's exploration. Then I widen the search, traced the scarring back to its source, to a sweating, unexploded mine, buried deep in his mind, around which every nerve in his body had tightened and closed. Let's unpack this carefully because it's the heart of the poem's message about post-traumatic stress disorder. After following the physical scars, the wife finally tracks the pain to its true source, his mind. There, Armitage gives us as readers an unforgettable metaphor for psychological trauma, a sweating, unexploded mine. Imagine an old landmine, buried, unexploded. It's dangerous because it could go off at any time, and yet it sits hidden beneath the surface. By calling it sweating, Armitage almost personifies it. Real old munitions can, of course, leak chemicals, but the sweating here evokes nervousness, anxiety. It's as if this bomb has its own anxious heartbeat. They convey the tension, urgency, a mine that could detonate whenever. And that makes us acutely aware of the fragility of the soldier's mental state. This mine is the ticking time bomb of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, ready to explode in nightmares, in flashbacks, or in panic attacks. The poem also ends with this image of every nerve in his body that had tightened and closed around the mine of his trauma. This suggests his entire being on a kind of high alert, his nerves clenching around that trauma, trying to contain it. It paints a picture of a man closed off, psychologically, physiologically, and emotionally. The wife has discovered that no wonder he's distant and changed as a man. He's guarding a volatile secret of war. Armitage is commenting on the broader reality of modern warfare. The injuries aren't just shrapnel and scars, but psychological wounds that are far harder to both see and therefore to heal. Now, in context, Armitage wrote The Manhunt after interviewing real soldiers and their families. In fact, this poem, which was originally subtitled Laura's Poem, was inspired by a soldier who served as a peacekeeper in Bosnia and returned home with very serious injuries and PTSD. Modern conflicts, like Bosnia or Iraq or Afghanistan, have forced us to confront PTSD more openly. The idea that a person can come home physically alive but emotionally shattered. Armitage's poem captures this truth with that image of the hidden mine. Ask yourself, why a mine? Mines are weapons that lie in wait underground. They are remnants of war that keep hurting people long after the war itself is over. So by using this metaphor, Armitage is showing us brilliantly how war is not truly over for this soldier, nor his wife or partner. Its threat is buried in his mind, waiting. It also indicates how careful, how cautious, how patient the partner must be. Any wrong move could set off his pain. At this point in the poem, the emotional tension has peaked. The wife has metaphorically journeyed from physical scars to the core of his psychological scar. And the final line delivers a gentle, poignant resolution. Then, and only then, did I come close. Notice, she doesn't say she fully understood or healed. She came close. The repetition of only then, obviously it's a refrain throughout the poem, in this last line emphasizes that only after this long, patient search could she almost reach him. Almost. The single word close is bittersweet. It implies that complete understanding, or indeed complete healing, might be out of reach, just out of reach. But she has at least become closer to him, gotten nearer to him than ever before. There's a hint of hope. She came close, knowing his pain and helping him, but also a hint of sadness, because maybe she can never really fully experience what he has. She can just empathize. We're left, as readers, with a mix of relief and also sorrow at how elusive full recovery can be. How do you feel that mix of emotions? We don't get a fairy tale ending, everything neatly wrapped up, fixed, sorted. Armitage offers an honest reflection. Loving someone with PTSD is an ongoing journey, and one that requires near infinite patience, and a journey that may never be completely finished. So as we come to the end of the poem, take a moment to reflect on the emotional journey we've been on. We started with an intimate scene, a wife reaching out to her scarred husband, and we end with this revelation of an invisible wound, the PTSD that lies buried deep within. Armitage's poem guides us through a mosaic of images: frozen rivers, blown hinges, porcelain bones, punctured lungs, rungs of ribs, a metal fetus, and finally, that unexploded mine. Each of these images is a piece of the puzzle, contributing to a portrait of trauma and love that are both intertwined. This poem makes the experience visceral. We don't just understand the wife's search, we feel it. We trace the scar with her, we hold our breath at the sight of the bullet on the scan, and we fear the mine that might go off if the healing isn't handled delicately. So ask yourself the question, what do you, as a student, as a reader, take away from this poem? Do you take away the lasting impact of war on soldiers and their loved ones? Do you take away the idea that the battleground is not only in distant lands, it also exists in the quiet of a bedroom at midnight, where a wife grapples with a war she never fought, but whose effects she must confront day by day? Does it get you to think about how those suffering from PTSD and those who support them have an ongoing emotional struggle and emotional journey? So, in conclusion, The Manhunt is a very moving exploration, an emotive exploration of love tested by war's trauma. It's heartbreaking and hopeful. And it gets us to think about this question: how can empathy and love bridge the gap that trauma creates? The poem doesn't give us easy answers, but it at least helps us feel our way to understanding. As always, thank you so much for listening to my analysis, and I hope it's both brought the poem to life for you in a new way and also helped you prepare effectively for your exams. Please make sure you listen to the other podcast episodes focused on year 9 and that are designed to help you with both Macbeth, but also on the conflict poems that you've studied as well too. So, as always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.